Most Florida retirees do not regret moving to the mountains. They regret something else. They regret buying the wrong kind of property or choosing the wrong town for the lifestyle they actually wanted. Because mountain living looks amazing when you visit for a weekend, but living here full time brings a few realities that people do not always think about ahead of time. Things like steep driveways, remote roads, maintenance on large wooded properties, or realizing that the town you chose is either much busier or much quieter than you expected. So today, we are going to walk through the most common things Florida retirees end up regretting after moving to the mountains, and more importantly, how to avoid them. Because when you understand these ahead of time, choosing the right home and the right town becomes much easier. I'm Trish Rodriguez with Higher Elevations Real Estate, local Georgia and North Carolina real estate agent with RE/MAX Town & Country, the Richard Kelly Group. And I help people relocating from Florida make confident decisions about where and how to live in the North Georgia and Western North Carolina mountains. And if you're in that early stage trying to figure all this out, I put together a free relocation guide that walks through exactly what it's like to live in each one of the main mountain towns and what to think about before you buy. I'll link that below in the description so you can download it. To contact me directly or start your mountain move, scan the QR code. Quick question for you before we dive in. When you picture your life in the mountains, do you imagine privacy and quiet or being close to restaurants, grocery stores, and town? Your answer to that question alone prevents one of the most common regrets people experience after moving here. Let's start with the first one: steep properties. Mountain views are one of the biggest reasons people move here. And many of the homes with the best views sit higher on the mountains. But what people sometimes discover after they move is that the driveway that felt exciting during the showing can become frustrating over time. Steep driveways can be challenging in winter weather. They can also make everyday things like groceries, guest visiting, or even walking outside more complicated. Now, this does not mean you should avoid mountain views. It just means the access to the home matters. This is one reason towns like Blairsville often appeal to retirees. You can still find beautiful views, but many properties have easier road access and more gradual terrain compared to some of the higher elevation areas around Blue Ridge. The second regret is buying too remote. When people first picture mountain living, privacy sounds incredible, and it can be. But sometimes buyers choose a property that is much further from town than they expected. 10 minutes does not sound far until that 10-minute drive is on a narrow gravel road, or until you realize your grocery store is actually 30 minutes away. For people who want privacy and convenience, towns like Blairsville or Hiawassee can be a great balance point. You can still find space and views, but you are not as isolated as some of the more remote mountain properties. And this is one of the biggest things I see with relocation buyers, which is why I break this down pretty clearly in that guide too. Because what sounds great in theory can feel very different day to day. Another regret people sometimes experience is cabin maintenance. Mountain cabins are beautiful. Wood siding, large decks, fireplaces, but those features also require upkeep. Trees drop leaves and branches, decks need staining, roofs and gutters need attention, and if the home sits deep in the woods, maintenance becomes part of everyday life. For some people, that is part of the charm. For others, they eventually realize they would prefer something simpler. Homes closer to town or properties with less wooded acreage can reduce that maintenance significantly. Areas around Blue Ridge often have more options like that, especially in neighborhoods closer to town. The next regret people rarely think about until later is medical access. When you are planning retirement, beautiful views matter, but so does proximity to healthcare. This does not mean there are no medical services here. There are. But depending on where your home is located, the drive to certain specialists or hospitals may take longer than expected. That is why some buyers prioritize locations closer to towns like Blairsville or Hiawassee, where services and regional hospitals are easier to access. It simply adds peace of mind. Another interesting regret goes in the opposite direction. Sometimes people buy in a town that is too busy. Blue Ridge is one of the most popular mountain towns in North Georgia, and it has a fantastic downtown area. Restaurants, breweries, events, but that popularity also means tourism and weekend traffic. For some people, that energy is exactly what they want. For others, they eventually realize they would prefer a quieter environment. That is where towns like Hayesville or Blairsville often feel more relaxed and residential. And finally, one that surprises people: choosing lake life without thinking about daily life. Lake Chatuge around Hiawassee and Hayesville is absolutely beautiful. Water views with mountains behind them are hard to beat. But the real question is whether lake lifestyle matches your everyday routine. If you love boating, fishing, and spending time on the water, lake living can be incredible. But if you are rarely on the lake, you may realize later that mountain views or proximity to town mattered more. This is why understanding your lifestyle is just as important as choosing the home itself. So if you take anything away from this video, let it be this: Florida retirees rarely regret moving to the mountains. What they regret is choosing a property or town that did not match how they actually wanted to live. Steep access, too remote, too much maintenance, too busy, too quiet, or focusing on the view instead of the daily lifestyle. When you understand those things ahead of time, it becomes much easier to find the right fit. Now, I am curious about something. Which of these would bother you the most? A steep driveway, being far from town, too much maintenance, or living somewhere that is too quiet? Tell me in the comments, because those preferences say a lot about which mountain town usually ends up being the best fit. If you are exploring a move from Florida to North Georgia or Western North Carolina mountains, make sure you subscribe. This channel is all about helping you understand what life here is actually like before you make the move. And if you want to avoid these kinds of regrets, go ahead and download that free relocation guide below. It'll help you think through the right town and the right type of property before you even start your search. Got questions? Reach out to me directly. And if you are still deciding between towns like Blue Ridge, Blairsville, Hiawassee, and Hayesville, the video where we compare what $700,000 to $1 million buys in each of these markets is a great one to watch next, because the same budget can create very different lifestyles depending on where you buy. I will see you in that video.